Oh man, it's a beautiful Friday and we gotta protect that payday, baby. Let's do a budget deck. Street Fighter, man. Let me tell you about Street Fighter. It had to be 92 or 93, right? I was in the arcade. There's just this giant dude in there. Back then, you put a quarter up and got in a line, right? Winner stays, loser pays for the next game. If you were good, you could play all day for a couple bucks. Anyways, this giant dude just puts up a bunch of quarters. The implication was he was going to play as long as he wanted, and if you didn't like it, he's going to Street Fighter you right in the face, buddy. So my turn comes. He's playing Chun-Li. I decide to counterpick M. Bison. So we get to playing and this guy's trash talking, he's calling me all sorts of vile names. Alright, so he wins the first round of 3 using Chun-Li. Second round, I had his strategy, right? I had his marker, I had the way he played. I started head stomping on a cross up, changing which side I was attacking, and this guy got perfected in 2 rounds. You win. Perfect. Anyway, this dude shoved me and I bonked my head on an arcade machine and I went home. But I won my game of Street Fighter. That's me getting thrown back in the art. The Universes Beyond stuff to me is fine. It's just different flavors. For some reason, Street Fighter and The Walking Dead, Stranger Things just kind of don't resonate with me. I think it's because they're too grounded in the real world. I'd rather see a far future fantasy setting like Warhammer 40k because it's less grounded and more fantastic. So long story short, I don't want to play Chun-Li in a commander deck, but I do dig Zethi Arcane Blademaster. Alright, this is 1 blue and a white for a legendary creature, human soldier. It's a 3/3 with multi-kicker. Multi-kicker cost is a hybrid white and blue. When Zethi Arcane Blademaster enters the battlefield, exile up to X target instant cards from your graveyard, where X is the number of times Zethi was kicked. Put a kick counter on each of them. When Zethi attacks, copy each exiled card you own with a kick counter on it. You may cast the copies. Love the art on this thing. Looks like someone who can feint, block, defect, and give a real good stabberoo. And it fits in with the multiverse. Maybe it looks like Strixhaven or something. So mechanically, she doesn't cheat any costs. If you exile a 1-mana spell, you still have to pay all associated costs, which is fine but not especially powerful. Zethi's utility comes from the fact that if you cast on turn 3, exile an instant and then bounce her, cast on turn 4, exile another one, you get the opportunity when she attacks to copy them all and pay for them again. Really what Zethi is doing is reusing your instants from your graveyard when you exile them. This is a challenging build around because Zethi has no evasion, she has no protection, basically a vanilla 3/3 that you need to have attack. But what are these colors good at? White has some of the best removal in the game and blue has a bunch of great bounce and draw. Azorius decks, white and blue, they're fantastic at controlling the board, slowing things down. These colors are also pretty good at paying off casting instants and sorceries. There's also a number of instants that can augment our commander's ability to attack so we don't get chumped into the command zone. Alright, so we have our basic strategies, let's dive in. As far as removal goes, there's about 11 pieces in this deck. Snap is probably the best one. It's 1 and a blue for an instant, return target creature to its owner's hand, untap up to 2 lands. Now these bounce spells, they double as a way to get Zethi back to our hand and a way to clear out blockers. If you're effectively bouncing things, especially for free with Snap, then you're going to have a good game. With Zethi, you aren't trading a card from your hand 1-for-1 with an opponent. And their card, you're reusing that every turn, which can grind your opponents down. It's kind of this slow, grindy deck. Snap, up until Dominaria Remastered, was a few dollars. It's down to 38 cents at present. While maybe not as efficient as a free spell like Snap, you can permanently remove problem permanents with White's efficient removal spells. There are a lot of variations, but you have Swords and Path. Those are kind of your hallmarks right there and the best ones. Those are your cards. They're budget friendly right now with a bunch of different arts you can use. If you want, you can get more creative with card choices to fit your budget. There's a bunch of destroy target and or exile target cards out there, whatever that are mana value 2 or less that you can select to include. And I do want to give a shout out to the old generous gift. What an awesome card. This thing's about $2 right now and is incredibly versatile. It's got that goofy art with the elephant just sitting on somebody's face. So you definitely want a lot of instant speed removal, and there's a ton out there that's very cheap. And while we're leaning into instants, there are some sorceries we can use to really screw up our opponents. I mean, though Zethi costs 3, she really costs 4 or 5 if you want to exile some impactful removal cards. Might be a later game spell, so you can sandbag some sweet board wipes like Single Combat. It's 3 white for a sorcery. Each player chooses a creature or planeswalker they control, then sacrifices the rest. Players can't cast creature or planeswalker spells until the end of your next turn. So even if Zethi's already out there, we can just blast everybody with that and cards like Divine Reckoning. 2 white for a sorcery. Each player chooses a creature they control, destroy the rest, has flashback for 5 white. I have 4 board wipes in this deck. They're all very similar and very cheap in these colors. Let your opponent set up, then blow it all up and get a little card advantage. All their stuff's going to the graveyard and you're holding the full grip. Playing this deck takes a little nuance. You have to know when to deploy a sweeper like this, and that's part of the fun. Now, believe it or not, there are 27 or so cards in this deck that deal with card draw, card selection. So you're either straight drawing a card or you're scrying or whatever. Lots of cheap little cantrips that hopefully provide some other utility like Leap and Shadow Rift. These cards function as a way to augment our commander's ability to attack with impunity. These little combat tricks feed our ability to reuse and recast our instants and are pretty good to copy with Zethi. Every turn you're drawing an extra card, dude. So I have about 9 cards like this, like Shelter, 1 to white for an instant. Target creature you control gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn, and it's got draw a card right on it. This was first printed in Odyssey in 2001, and this card's a little thirsty looking, man. I mean, you got this elf or lady, she's hiding behind a translucent bubble in some mage battle or something, but what the heck is she doing out there with no pants on? Anyway, protection is great for getting an attacker through. So sometimes you're stuck with one of these cards in your hand, you don't have a creature to target, you want to get it in the graveyard, dude. You got draw and discard, looting if you will. Also very useful in this deck to put instants you want into the graveyard. You got Frantic Search, 2 and a blue for an instant, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards, untap up to 3 lands. This is probably the best of the looter cards and is so cheap right now thanks to a reprint and Dominaria Remastered. Alright, listen, I can see you right through the computer right now shaking your fist at me and saying, Nicky G, how do we win? Well, similar to how Talrand wins in all of his decks, and he's in there as well. This guy's a Sky Summoner. He's 2 blue for a legendary creature Merfolk Wizard. It's a 2/2. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 2/2 blue Drake creature token with flying. I mean, this guy's classic. Talrand's a really cool dude. He's like Matthew McConaughey. If you're into casting instants, Talrand's going to invite you over to his island. He's going to sit down with you on the couch. He's going to unpack a little shell. He's going to talk about it all day. He's a good guy, but you really have to refocus him on whatever you want to learn about because he'll go on about merfolk history and politics, and it's kind of boring. Then you got this guy, the old docent of perfection, and its backside, Final Iteration. This is such a cool, powerful payoff, especially if you're playing at instant speed. It's really an army in a can for 5 mana. You're casting instants with Zethi, so this will create a little fella, and it's going to flip real quickly. What is this guy doing? Summoning metal bugs? 3 blue for an enchantment. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create an XX colorless construct artifact creature token where X is that spell's mana value. Has 3 blue, exile it, return all instant and sorcery cards from your graveyard to your hand. Activate only if you control 6 more artifacts. Yes, you're making little spiky constructs and that's great. But one of the issues with a bunch of small spells is that you cast 4 in a turn and you gas right out. That second ability is even more useful in this deck so you can reuse all those tiny spells as long as you have your 6 artifacts, buddy. Sentinel Tower is 4 generic mana for an artifact. Whenever an instant or sorcery spell is cast during your turn, Sentinel Tower deals damage to any target equal to 1 plus the number of instant and sorcery spells cast before it this turn. It's a little $3 card from Battle Bond. This can get out of hand pretty quickly. You cast your first, you're dealing 1 damage, cast your second, 2 damage, third, 3 damage, blah blah blah. That's 6 damage right there, buddy. Anyway, it's any target, so you can blast faces or you can blast problem creatures. We also have some general utility spell slinger cards like Turnabout, 2 blue for an instant. Choose artifact, creature, or land. Tap all untapped permanents of the chosen type target player controls, or untap all tapped permanents of that type target player controls. So basically this targets a player, so if you have some hexproof thing or somebody's got Swiftfoot boots on somebody, don't matter, brother. If you haven't used this card, you should, especially in decks that like this. It's incredibly versatile. It can be a ritual, or it can be resource denial, or it can just clear out all your opponent's blockers so Zethi can get through. And did you know Ray of Command was an instant? It's 3 and a blue for an instant. Untap target creature an opponent controls and gain control of it until end of turn. That creature gains haste until end of turn. When you lose control of that creature, tap it. I didn't know this was an instant. I hadn't seen this card in a while. Well, now you do, buddy, and knowing is half the battle. Blue is full of impactful little instants like this, and you can kind of sprinkle some utility ones in your deck. So this Zethi deck comes in at about $60 and provides a framework for a pretty fun interactive deck that can be pretty brutal if it's allowed to go off. So the first couple turns you're setting up, you're casting ramp, stuff like that, and you can want to cast a removal spell. Just get it into the graveyard. You cast your Swords to Plowshares on somebody's mana dork, whatever. It doesn't really matter. And then later on you're going to cast Zethi, get her out, exile that with a kick counter on it, and then you can start doing all kinds of crazy stuff. You want to draw into your win conditions like Talrand, and just generally go off, slow down the game. This is a budget deck. It's not the most powerful thing in the universe, right? But it was a really interesting deck building challenge. This commander's not especially powerful. It doesn't go out there and say, hey man, draw cards and put lands onto the battlefield. That's great. Just go ahead and do it. Like Chu Lane or whatever, however you pronounce his name, that dingball. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I appreciate all your comments. This is Nicky G from Better Commander signing off.